just take a minute or two to study the diagram. Okay, are there any questions about anything you see in the diagram? Okay, Oksana, tell me about the diagram. I'm going to make it a little bit smaller.
Okay, the diagram illustrates the geometrical, sorry, because you are moving.
You know, it's getting distorted too. Okay, sorry about that.
That's fine. The diagram illustrates the geothermal energy into the electricity. Demonstrate the process of geothermal energy into the electricity.
So it's pronounced geothermal.
Geothermal.
Energy into electricity.
Mm-hmm.
You're missing a concept in the middle. You're missing something here. No.
The process of, hold on.
Process of what? Of what geothermal energy into electricity?
Transforming.
Does that make sense, Oksana?
Yes, transforming geometrical energy. Mm-hmm.
So that's the missing concept. Okay, good. Very, very nice first sentence. Okay.
Yeah.
Now,
overall, but here the process, okay, it should be 5 stages, no, maybe 3 stages, maybe 5. I still to find out, you know, the cold water pumped down, right? But there is a hot water pumped up.
yeah, so how many big stages could you chop this into?
I have a problem with the process.
Well, don't overthink it. It's a fairly straightforward diagram, and yes, there are 5 steps in the process. But if you had to, because we're not going to write 5 body paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
It's a 20-minute task, super short, 150 to 200 words. So if you could just, in a very general way, divide this process up into bigger chunks, how many big steps would there be?
No, might be 3.
What would they be?
The first process is the cold water pumped down through the injection. Through the injection well. The injection well. What is that? Actually, I don't know.
Injection well?
Yeah.
Do you know what a well is? If you buy a property outside the city, it might come with a well.
Mm-hmm.
What's a well?
I will check.
Don't check, guess.
Well, something with well.
It's got nothing to do with health.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, it's where is the, I don't know how to explain. It could be water inside, you know what I
Yeah,
mean.
yeah, yeah. Do you know that fairy tale with Timmy who fell down the well?
Yeah, 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 I know, yeah. But I
Yeah.
have to be honest, I checked. I didn't know before that. I
Okay.
just checked. So the injection well, and then uh, the cold water goes through the geothermal zone, hot rocks, then again production the well, gosh, and then transform to the hot water. No, but hot water pumped up. What the hot water pumped up? The cold water?
I'm not sure what your question means.
Okay, I tried to figure out with that diagram, right?
Hmm.
There is the cold water, right? Goes down through the geothermal zone hot rocks, right?
Yes.
Then we can see hot water pumped out. It's hot water pumped out from where? From geothermal zone hot rocks? Hot
Yeah.
rocks?
Hmm.
Oh, okay.
It's actually really simple, right? How deep down is this? How deep is this well?
How do 4.55 kilometers.
So it's a really deep well. So if
Mm-hmm.
you dig down that deep, it's gonna be really hot down there.
Okay. Okay.
So that's how simple this process is. You pour cold water down this super deep well. It just touches, it comes into contact with these hot rocks, and then what do?
Okay, through the through the hot rocks. Then from there, pumped up the hot water,
Yeah.
which transformed to the condenser, which is steaming, right? Through the
So yeah, so a condenser is some kind of device.
okay. The condenser is no, the condenser produces the steam which goes through the turbine and and generator to make electricity,
Yep.
something like that.
Yeah, very
But
good.
but that's what I find out that geothermal power, oh sorry, yes, the geothermal power, everything goes through the water, right? So it's the diagram illustrates the process of transforming into the electricity, but it's properly probably to say something about the water, because the water is main, uh, you know what I mean, no?
Well, water is usually used in producing electricity. Obviously not with wind power and not with solar panels, but with nuclear power,
Mm-hmm.
right? They just use the nuclear power in the same way that they're using the geothermal rocks here.
Right.
The only purpose of the nuclear fuel is to create heat. So
Right.
if you've got a coal-powered power plant or natural gas, or if you use like a diesel or gasoline generator, uh,
So,
okay, those are different. Sorry, but if you use coal-powered power plant, or if you use natural gas, it's or if you use nuclear, it's the purpose of the fuel is just to heat up the water. So instead of that fuel, you're just using hot rocks here, right? It's a conceptually, it's a ridiculously simple process. Pour water onto hot rocks, capture the heat, turn it into steam, use the steam to power a turbine, and the rest of the process is the same.
okay, so then the next sentence should be overall, there are maybe three main process or phases, wherever you like it, which starts with current cold water.
Well, if they've numbered the steps for you, you might as well use it.
Okay. Yes. Okay. Overall, there are 3 main processes.
There are 5 steps.
Okay, 5 steps. And what the next one? Which includes three I don't know, I don't know how to divide them.
Well, this is the general overview, so don't go into too much detail, but what happens over those 5 steps?
5 steps. Which starts with, can I do like that? No. With the current cold water. Move to the
I'm interested in what other people might write, because there are several ways to do this. So we've got an overall picture right now of how this process works. Does anyone still have any questions about any part of this diagram or how this process works?
For me, I see as like 4 stages.
Mm-hmm.
Like bringing down the cold water, like that as the first one.
Okay, why don't we write these out in point form? When you're in the exam, or even if you're not taking IELTS,
Yeah.
you don't need to start by writing full sentences. That's actually not a great idea.
Yeah.
Start by writing point form, then transform your point form after you're happy with it into the full version.
Mm-hmm.
Don't worry about spelling, don't worry about grammar. Point form ideas come first. Okay, so tell me, I'll just cycle through everyone then. Chamri, tell me the first step. Cold water.
Yeah, inject the cold water to the ground level.
Sorry, I missed the first thing you said. It's very quiet.
Inject the cold water to the ground level.
Inject the cold water into the ground level. Can you be a little bit more specific?
Yeah. What do you call this? Is cold water to the underground? And inject the cold water.
Into what?
Into the hot rocks on underground.
The injection well.
Injection.
I don't think injection well is going to have a synonym.
Okay. So this is you call the injection well. Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. So that could be the first step.
Okay, Allah, what happens next?
Okay, the second step, the cold water hits the hot rocks. Then
Where are the hot rocks?
in the geothermal zone.
Mm-hmm. And what happens as a result?
Which then sent by production well to the condenser.
What? Okay. You're missing a stage. The cold water hits the hot rocks in the geothermal zone. We're just going to write simple sentences right now, okay? So what happens when that cold water hits the hot rocks?
Which produces steam?
Not yet.
Which produces hot water?
Okay. Which produces hot water. Okay, good. So I'm going to tell you something that we've noticed about these process diagrams. The word count is generally pretty close to 150. Whenever I write these or other writing examiners write these, then we have a hard time producing anything that's significantly higher than 150 words. We're usually very, very close. Not sure why that is. It's a pretty consistent thing that we notice. So the reason I mention this is you have to kind of extend things a little bit. Be very explicit, include every part of the process to boost your word count. And when you're doing this point form method, just write simple sentences first. If you've got a complex sentence, that's fine, but don't push yourself to write big, beautiful, grammatically correct sentences. Simple sentences are fine. You can combine them later. Okay, which produces hot water. Very nice. And let's go with Sylvia, next step.
Then it goes to the production well and it's pumped up.
Then,
and the hot water is pumped up to the condenser.
And then it goes to the production well and
hot water is pumped up to the condenser.
Up to the okay. There's a physical difference here. So the hot water, it's pumped up. This is underground, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the condenser is above ground. I would mention that just in the interest of being super explicit and in the interest of kind of stretching things apart to lengthen the text.
So
mention these kinds of details.
Pumped up above the ground to the condenser.
Above ground to the condenser. All right. Dina.
Yes. So to the condenser. Steam is in the condenser. Steam develops.
Let's use passive.
Yeah.
Is
generated.
Mm-hmm. Chamri.
Sorry, I missed it again.
Yep. So next step, Dina said in the condenser, steam is generated. That's step 4. Now we're getting into step 5.
Oh, okay. So the steam is the steam spins in the generator and pass to the transformation. No, transportation.
Not yet. You missed one. The steam spins what?
The steam spins the generator. No, the turbine. The steam spins the generator. I mean, sorry, the turbine.
Okay, and then what happens next?
And the electricity passes to the transform station.
Not yet. It's a little bit imprecise because there's 2 things there in step 5. There's the turbine and there's the generator. So the steam spins the turbine, and then what does, I mean, it gives you the stuff right there, right?
Yeah, what is it? I can't clearly, yeah, what is it?
It says powered by turbine and produces electricity.
Okay. So the steam spins the turbine and generate electricity.
We can say the steam spins the turbine, heat, and turn on a generator to produce electricity.
Okay, we just need a better verb.
Turbine powers the generator.
Turbine powers is a good one. Generator and produces electricity. So you can't say and produces electricity. You need to paraphrase that. Remember, paraphrasing means transforming it grammatically. It doesn't mean that you have to find a synonym. It means that you can turn a verb into a noun into a verb. You can turn into a participle.
How do you say electricity is produced at this point? Electricity is produced. Electricity is produced.
Or the turbine powers the generator. What about using a participial phrase?
And electricity is produced.
That's what we've got right now. Maybe you can't see it. Oops. Okay, I'm going to make the diagram a little bit smaller because I've run out of screen. Here we go. The turbine powers the generator. Producing electricity. Which produces electricity is the same as producing electricity.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which passes to power grid,
yeah,
and then to the end user. And to the end user.
Well, let's keep it plural and then to end users. So that's 82 words. So this is going to be tight. This will be very tight. You need to use transitions abundantly. I mean, like, basically in this entire body, you've got to put transition phrases and words between each idea. And then we also need our introduction. So we've got a really nice context sentence here. This one's very nice. I'll give you, let's say, 5 to 7 minutes to write a general overview. Let me just share this with you in case you need it. Okay, so I put the link to this document in the chat. And I'll just leave this on the screen like this. And very nice, Dina. Oksana, are you there?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I have a question.
Mhm.
That current, where we can use the word current, it's like current water, cold water, right? No?
Current means the flow itself.
Okay.
So if you say it's flowing upstream or downstream, that's with the current or against the current. If you're rowing a boat, for example, are you rowing with the current or against the current? Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay.
Current can also refer to the electricity that is flowing through the wires. I don't think you need that word in this case at all.
Mhm. Okay.
Current would be relevant if you've got some kind of process involving a river, and for whatever reason,
Environment.
like the direction of the flow has some kind of impact on whatever's going on. Maybe when salmon are swimming upstream to spawn, they're swimming against the current. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So that would be relevant in that case, but I haven't seen that before. Okay, so let's just fix this one. Yeah, this is quite good. There's just a few small issues. Process consists of 5 steps starting with cold water, so we're just going to get rid of that.
Okay.
Cold water being,
Okay. Being float. Something wrong with float.
you can't flow something.
Oh, okay. Okay, but how I can replace the word injection? Is there is any the same meaning words
Mhm.
or being injected?
Being injected is okay,
Oh, okay, that's what I want to know. Okay.
but look, they give you a synonym here.
Pumped down. Yeah, yes, you're right. Being
Pump, pumped or injected.
oh,
I can't think of another word that we could use right now.
being pumped, yeah.
Being-
Into the injection well. Yeah.
Electricity. You produce something, someone.
Ending by.
Or someone?
Hey, I made these cookies, you. I baked this cake, you. Maybe you can tell I'm hungry. I cooked this pasta, you.
No, for you, right?
For you.
Or you?
Okay. For to or electricity for end users. Yes, you're
It's
right.
right because you make something for someone, producing electricity for end users.
Mhm. Thank you very much.
Yep. Okay, good stuff. Got Sylvia's here. Okay, Sylvia. Too much.
Mm-hmm.
It's way too big, but it's okay. And we're seeing the same issues that we typically see. All right, let's go through it together. The diagram illustrates the process of generating
Electricity.
no, electricity isn't countable.
Mm-hmm.
So just generating
electricity.
Just nothing.
Oh, nothing. In a geothermal power plant.
Good. Geothermal.
Geothermal.
It's not specific. Means any, right? It's just one example of a geothermal power plant. Overall.
Nothing.
Good. Which start with cold water.
Is.
No. This is the same thing exactly that we covered at the beginning of class.
Being.
That's it. It's like this. Okay. Simple sentence. This is the participial phrase transformation.
Mm-hmm.
What was changed here? Notice this is passive voice, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to write that because this is important. Passive participial phrase transformation. So what did we do to go from this to get to this?
That is for being.
Yep. Just transform is to being.
So, Ian, excuse me. So the
Yep.
both sentences are passive voice sentences, right?
Well, this is a sentence. Cold water is pumped underground.
So that is also a passive voice.
Yes.
So,
Because
okay.
workers pump cold water underground. So that's not very good English because obviously some worker is doing that.
Yeah.
And that's transformed into being pumped. And now this is a fragment by itself, right? This is not a sentence. You would need to add something like the first step is cold water being pumped underground. The process starts with cold water being pumped underground. Okay.
Into the ground?
Under the ground, or into the
under.
ground, yeah. Pump down to the ground, into the ground is good, or pump down under the ground is fine too.
And then?
And then. This is a really common mistake, and it's not a serious one, mainly because of how often it occurs even among native speakers. Then is not a conjunction like and. Then is a conjunctive adverb like however, furthermore, therefore. Right? So with conjunctive adverbs, it's like, remember, it's independent clause, semicolon, conjunctive, adverb, comma, independent clause. All right, so this is the pattern. You're going to use then in the same way, or in the middle of a sentence, it has to be and then. Let's transform it into,
Nothing.
good.
Mm.
What's the punctuation here?
In the final step, punctuation.
Yeah, what's the punctuation that we need here?
A comma.
Mm-hmm. This is a general rule. This is your subject, right? The steam, then the verb is created. Whatever comes before the subject in the sentence, separate it with a comma. In the morning, comma, you eat breakfast. In the evening, comma, you eat dinner.
Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing.
There we go.
Mr. Yan, when we use the and then, we need to put comma after then or before and?
Not necessarily. Usually not after then. After and then, not usually. Before, it's up to you. So when you've got these long sentences separated with one of these coordinating conjunctions, so these are soyban, right? So, or, yet, but, and, nor. You don't need a comma before if it's two short sentences. If it's longer ones, then it's up to you. If you think it helps the reader to just pause, like right here, then go ahead.
Okay. Because when we use then in the beginning of the sentence, we put after then comma if it is
That's it.
alone. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But with and, no need.
Generally, people don't. So the purpose of a general overview, whether it's for IELTS or whether it's for something you're doing in your personal or professional life, is to give the reader a general idea of the details that are coming next.
Okay.
It has to be really general because if it gets too specific, it's not helpful for the reader. It's too detailed and it's confusing for the reader. So when you say something like, as a result of the condensed process turbine and the generator, I have no idea what that means if I don't already understand how this works.
Okay. Should I say that the number of steps that you have got in such a process always at the beginning?
It's helpful. And think about it as a reader. If the person who's presenting, or if the text you're reading says, this process includes 5 steps. So right away, your brain goes, so the information that's coming next, I'm going to put it into 5 categories. You are mentally prepared for learning about 5 categories. It's very helpful for the reader.
Got it.
If you're writing an essay, you would very briefly list the 2 or 3 reasons. Then the reader knows, this person's going to talk about 2 or 3 reasons.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's all about how can I help the reader better understand all this detailed information that's coming next. If you just start with the details, it confuses anyone who's not already an expert. So
Ian, because I actually started writing, saying the number of steps and all, then I ended up like talking more or less what I'm going to speak within the body part. Then I realized it's going to be too much. This is why I cut it off to this way.
yeah, it stops being a general overview and it starts being specific information. So if it's too specific, it's not general anymore.
Understand.
When you're starting something off, probably don't want to start with a pronoun because the reader has no idea what the pronoun refers to. The process starts
With
injecting cold water into or an injection well. Or we're talking about, this image is not of a specific location.
Yeah.
It's not a specific injection well, it's just anywhere you have this kind of setup. Starts with parallel structure, injecting cold water into an injection well and
generates.
nope.
What did generating? Generating electricity.
When you make a list, all the items in that list should be the same grammatical structure, and that grammatical structure is determined by the first item in the list. So if you've got the process starts with, and your first item is injecting, blah, 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 all of your items need to be the same format. Generating electricity at the end as a result of how do they generate the electricity? The process starts with injecting cold water. What comes out the other end in order to generate this electricity?
Hot water.
What's the next step after the hot water? Hot water is not gonna, hot water can't push a turbine.
Yeah.
Not like this. If the water is falling onto a turbine, then the temperature doesn't matter. But in this, yeah. So why don't we just do that then? And generating electricity at the end as a result of the
steam.
Is this going to work?
Steam produce.
Generating electricity at the end. It doesn't read well.
Yeah.
Any suggestions from anyone else?
Results of the steam.
As a result of creating steam or producing steam.
That's better. I would add the part about 5 steps. Where can we put that in here?
we had to start from the beginning then.
You could add it as a modifier, because where could you put 5-step?
Start with 5 steps in.
The 5-step process.
There you go. I'm not crazy about this, especially because a reader is not going to know what an injection well is. Can we make this more general? Where is the cold water injected?
Into the
Imagine you're explaining this to like a kid in grade 2.
underground.
Okay, deep underground.
Shouldn't it necessary to have into in front of deep?
No. Inject it deep underground.
Okay.
You wanted to put something in here?
Yeah, into?
No.
Okay.
It was placed underground. We dug deep underground. It's located underground. The president is hiding underground. Okay. Any questions? I added a couple things here because the issue is going to be length. Before I get to that though, Dina's really good. She's got passive voice in here. This is like a standard phrase that you can throw in at the beginning of one of these descriptions. It can be clearly seen. They want to see passive voice. A lot of writers, a lot of English teachers will tell you to avoid passive voice. And sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't. But in this case, examiners want to see that you're comfortable with a wide variety of grammatical structures. So put in passive voice 2, maybe 3 times in writing task 1 and writing task 2. This is an easy way to work it in. Just memorize this phrase, stick it into the beginning, and then tick, you've got passive voice. Starting with, anytime you've got a process starting with ba 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 and ending by or with ba 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 ba. This is a very nice format. So I added a couple parts here. This is a detail we didn't include initially. The water is injected to a depth of 4.5 kilometers. This is an important detail, very important detail. Here, where we're talking about between 2 and 3, between steps 2 and 3, what's the direction of the water? Seems like a minor detail, but
Downwards.
how does it go from 2 to 3?
Horizontal.
Yeah, that's in the horizontal direction. I'd say that's worth mentioning, especially because it's going to be tight for the word count. And in the condenser, we said steam is generated or produced, but what is it produced from?
From hot water?
From hot water.
And when we will divide the body paragraphs, we can good idea to put a step above and under the ground, so we can combine step 2 and 3 together.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, very shortly, I'm going to put the model answer that I've got. I'm going to add it to this document, so it'll show up in a few minutes if you just refresh this document. And that's how it was divided. Basically, the under the ground process, and then the second body paragraph is the above ground process.
above the ground process. Yeah. Okay.
Often, downward cycle or downward process would be half of it, upward would be the other half, but the downward cycle is just, it's way too short. All right, so underground and above ground. Okay then, so I'll post the assignment location in just a few moments, but it's right here. It'll work in just a couple minutes. Okay, so this is due Thursday at noon. The video will be posted early in the day tomorrow. And then the revisions, I'll check it tomorrow around noon. Revisions will be due the next day. All right, so if there's no questions, then that's it for today.
Thank you, Ian. Good night.
Okay, good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Take care.
Good night.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.